So, one night stand? The text came hours after we left that club. My mind was still a bit fuzzy, a mix of tequila and the way his eyes lingered on me all night. It was stupid, reckless. But after so much bad luck and heartache, I wasn't exactly thinking straight. His reply surprised me. It wasn't cocky or crude, more like, curious? That depends, how good was it? I grinned, swiping out a reply. We fell into this flirty banter for the rest of night. A week later, we were inseparable. Casual dates turned into pizza nights and movies until sunrise. My friends rolled their eyes, said it was a rebound. That it would fizzle out fast, just like all the rest. But with him, it felt different. His apartment was always a mess. It didn't bother me at first. We were wrapped up in that messy, new relationship bubble. But one rainy afternoon, I pointed at the pile of takeout boxes, half joking, "Do you ever clean this place up?" His eyes flickered back to his phone, a frown pulling at his lips. I laughed it off, tried to change the subject. That night, everything changed. I woke up with a pounding headache, the kind that makes your whole body shake. He offered to take me to the ER, but it was clear he wasn't happy about it. That flicker of annoyance on his face again, it stung. Waiting in the bleak hospital room, I kept texting him. Silly things, little updates. His replies got shorter and shorter. Then, nothing. I figured his battery died or something. But when the nurse called my name, I was alone. He picked me up later, mumbling something about his charger dying. Avoided my eyes all the way home. In the morning, his side of the bed was empty, just a faint smell of perfume that definitely wasn't mine. That's when the first sick feeling hit, the kind you try to ignore, but it just grows and grows in your stomach. My fingers trembled as I read the text over and over. Saw him at the bar last night, way too cozy with some girl. It was from his friend, a guy the first barely knew. Then it hit me. My parents wanted me to move back home. He'd been acting weird, asking for space. Could those nights out be more than just hanging with the guys? I tried not to panic. We weren't exclusive, right? But it still felt like a punch to the gut. I needed to see him, needed to talk. I drove to his apartment and just stood there on the doorstep. My voice came out weaker than I expected. "We need to talk." He wouldn't meet my eyes. Just muttered something about needing space, about it not working anymore. He shoved his key in my hand and turned to go, and I blurted out, "Is it because of her?" He froze. "Who?" His voice was sharp, defensive. I held up my phone, showed him the text. He ran his hand through his hair, then shrugged. "It's nothing, she's just a friend." Just a friend? I scoffed. But doubt had taken root, twisting in my stomach. That night, I drank too much wine and texted him. Angry stuff at first, then pathetic pleading. Why was he doing this? Did I mean nothing? I even joked, "Probably should get tested now." His response chilled me to the bone. A simple, "Yeah, you probably should." Rage surged through me. I got dressed, went out with my friends. We ended up at his favorite bar, the usual crowd. And there he was, laughing with her. My knees buckled. I didn't even know her name, just a blur of blonde hair, the cleany dress I'd never wear. He saw me, tried to look away. But before I could even think, his friend was dragging me outside. He was yelling, saying we needed to talk, and then he, me, and her were standing there in the rain with everyone gawking. He was sitting on the curb outside the bar. Rain plastered his hair across his forehead, and he was shaking. Not from the cold, I realized, but from fear or shame or something else I couldn't name. "I'm a monster," he kept mumbling, "I'm a monster." For a moment, my anger melted away. Part of me wanted to comfort him, to take him home. But then I saw her. She stood a few feet away, mascara streaking down her face. I could barely look at her, I could barely look at him. "I didn't know," she finally said, her voice small. "Honestly, I didn't know about you." I just nodded, then forced myself to speak. "Let's go inside, okay?" My voice was steadier than I expected. We'll get some water, sit down. Inside, away from the prying eyes, it felt like we were in some strange limbo. He sat in a corner booth, staring at the table. She and I shared a bottle of water, her fingers trembling as she poured a glass. The silence stretched out, broken only by his mumbled apologies. We talked, not about him, at first. About her, her life, how he'd lied to both of us. There was a sort of twisted camaraderie in it, two women betrayed, figuring out a way to survive the night. Eventually, the conversation shifted back to him. When he finally left, it was late. He got up, glanced at us both like he might say something, then just walked away. She sighed, pushing her wet hair back. I don't want to be between you, she said. Just know, I'm so sorry. I remember thinking it was crazy, this girl, apologizing to me. But somehow, it felt right. We waited in awkward silence for a while, both of us lost in thought. It must have been near dawn when we finally walked back outside, blinking in the sudden light. That's when the next bombshell hit. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was him, finally, but it wasn't an explanation, not an apology. It was a text so cold, it seemed to freeze my blood. Saw your car outside the house. Go home. I don't remember driving, I just remember the apartment door swinging open, my feet stumbling across the same messy floor. He was standing there, arms crossed, face pale. He was waiting for me. We need to talk, I rasped. I wasn't even sure my voice worked anymore. There's nothing to talk about, he snapped back. Just go. Please. I wanted to yell. To scream. I wanted to throw things, hit him. But all I could do was sink into the couch and stare at the I saw the texts, I managed to say. My voice was barely a whisper. He shifted awkwardly, he knew I'd gone through his phone. Those mean nothing, he said, but his eyes wouldn't meet mine. Nothing, my voice rose, cracking. They were flirting with her friends, asking them to hang out, planning some big group thing. Look, he sighed, running a hand through his hair. I'm an idiot, okay? I screwed up, but it's over. Over. As if it hadn't ripped my whole world apart. Just another mistake he could apologize for, and it would all disappear. I thought about the girl from the bar. What had she told her friends about that night? Did they whisper about me, too? I felt sick to my stomach. Everything inside me was screaming to leave, to run, but it was like I was frozen in place. Then the thought hit me, the reason I hadn't stormed out already. What if there were even more women? What if this was just how he was? The rage inside me was building like a pressure cooker about to explode. If it's over, then why are you texting them still? I practically screamed. I snatched his phone, almost knocking it out of his hand. We wrestled for it, ending up on the floor, me swiping through his messages with frantic fingers. His apologies meant nothing now. My mind raced a million miles an hour. How many other girls were there? How long had he been doing this? His face was red, but he wasn't fighting me anymore. Just staring up at the ceiling, defeated. That's when I saw it. Not with the girl from the bar, or even her friends. It was a whole new name, someone I didn't recognize at all. Who's this? I shoved the phone in his face. He just shook his head, wouldn't answer. That's when it hit me, the full, horrible truth. It wasn't just one mistake, one slip up. It was a pattern, something embedded deep in him. Every time I thought it was over, I was just discovering a new layer of his betrayal. The other girl. Suddenly I remembered her, standing in the doorway, rain dripping off her hair. Her confused face. We were both victims. Victims of this guy, this twisted little game he played. Get out, I said, my voice flat, dead inside. I don't want to see you ever again. He didn't argue, didn't even say he was sorry, again. Just grabbed his stuff and walked out the door. I didn't watch him go. I spent the rest of the night numb. I couldn't cry, couldn't move, just kept staring at that name on the screen. How could someone you thought you knew be capable of such cruelty? I didn't have an answer, but in that moment, I knew what I had to do. The next morning felt like I was underwater. Everything moved slow, muffled. There were cups on the table from the night before, the blankets I'd given the other girl still crumpled on the couch. But she was gone, and so was he. I showered, trying to scrub away the sticky feeling of betrayal. The hot water did nothing. With each passing minute, the numbness was replaced by anger. I had to do something, but what? My phone buzzed. It was her, the other girl. Her text was hesitant. "Hey, are you okay?" Something snapped in me. I wasn't just some victim anymore. I typed back fast, my fingers flying. "Meet me at his work. Lunchtime." I wasn't sure what the plan was, but the thought of showing up there, the two of us, felt cathartic. Like ripping off a band-aid, painful, but necessary. We met outside his office, me clutching a coffee for courage. Seeing her again, it was less awkward, more like there was this invisible bond between us, victims of the same terrible guy. When he emerged, all smiles and bravado until he saw us, something shifted. He finally seemed to grasp the mess he'd made. We didn't yell, didn't cry. We just walked up to him. Together. "How many more are there?" I asked. My voice was cold, unwavering. He stammered, tried to lie. But the look in our eyes told him we weren't buying it. It was pathetic, honestly. He fumbled with his phone, then shoved it at us. "Just see for yourselves." And we did. Texts after texts, all the proof we needed. There were other girls, so many names I didn't know. It made me feel physically sick. But there was something about seeing it in black and white, it was empowering. "This ends now," I said to him. It wasn't a question, it was a statement. He nodded, then walked away, shoulders slumped. Me and the other girl, we watched him go. Then, we looked at each other and just started laughing. Not a happy laugh, but a bitter, twisted one. At least it felt like we were strong. Strong enough to walk away knowing that we deserved so much better. In the aftermath of that day, there were no dramatic scenes. We didn't trash his place or post revenge photos online. It was all so mundane. I went home, packed up everything that was mine, and left his key on the kitchen counter. I texted the other girl, and turns out, she did the same. Weeks passed. I tried to move on. Went on dates, pretended I was okay. But my friends noticed. My family noticed. The weight of it all hung over me. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. One day, my phone rang. I almost didn't answer. It was him. "Can we talk?" His voice was small, almost meek. Something I'd never heard before. Part of me wanted to hang up, scream at him for all the pain he'd caused. But some twisted curiosity made me agree. We met in a neutral place, a coffee shop we'd never been to. He looked different, thinner, worn down. There was none of that cocky charm he used to carry. "I'm so sorry," he started. The usual, "I know it means nothing now, but I need you to know." He kept rambling, apologies mixed with excuses. It wasn't until he mentioned therapy that my ears perked up. They think that I need some kind of help. Addiction or something. To do this, to hurt people like that. His words echoed in my head. Was this real? Was it just another excuse? Should I even care? But then I remembered the other girl, the ones I'd seen on his phone. There was a pattern, a sickness deep down that wasn't going to disappear with a simple apology. I didn't say much, just nodded, then got up and left. On the drive home, a strange feeling washed over me. Not forgiveness, not exactly. But maybe understanding? Like understanding that he was broken in a way I'd never be able to fix. It wasn't my burden to carry. Life moved on in that strange, slow way it does after something huge happens. It wasn't like the cheating ever just disappeared from my mind. It was more like I put it on a high shelf, somewhere I could ignore it most days. The other girl, surprisingly, became someone I stayed in touch with. Call it survivor solidarity, we'd check in now and then, see how the other was doing. It was reassuring, a reminder that I wasn't alone in facing the aftermath of his mess. Time really does heal some wounds. The bad days got fewer. I started dating other guys, building something new. And there was him. He was different, patient. He'd listen when I mentioned the past, but never prodded. Then one night, he asked me to marry him. It should have been the happiest moment, but a darkness flickered inside me. A voice whispering those old doubts, could I trust him? Was this even real? It messed with my head. I wanted to say yes, to finally move forward, to stop living in that dusty old apartment of betrayal. But something held me back. Then my mom called. Her usual chatter, then she dropped the bomb. Her husband, my stepdad, was cheating. It felt like history repeating itself, that same sick feeling churning in my stomach. Seeing her pain triggered my own all over again. I could barely form words to comfort her. All I could think was, am I doing this to myself? Letting a man walk all over me? The rage I'd pushed down bubbled up. That night, I had the most vivid dream. Me. Sitting on that curb in the rain, him sobbing next to me. Only this time, I was the one walking away. I looked at my fiancé copyright, this kind man who loved me in a way that seemed so simple. It wasn't fair to him that I still carried that doubt. But was it even doubt anymore, or was it something deeper? Was this scar from the past too deep to ever truly heal? The next morning I did something I'd sworn I'd never do. I booked a therapy appointment. I figured, if I was going to fall apart over this, I might as well do it in front of someone who got paid to listen. The therapist was a Euro nice, I guess. She asked all the expected questions, stuff I'd already thought through a million times. But talking out loud, actually saying the words, felt different. Each session forced me to face the things I'd been burying. That night, I dug out an old notebook and started writing. Not pretty prose, just messy, angry scribbles. Questions, rants, everything swirling around in my head. I filled pages, feeling the tightness in my chest loosen a bit. Then, that stupid online thing popped into my head. Support groups for people who'd been cheated on. Seemed cheesy, but what did I have to lose? I found one, mostly women sharing stories just like mine, offering advice I didn't know if I needed. But just reading their words late at night made me feel less alone. One day at work, this older woman I barely knew pulled me aside. Turns out her husband had done something similar years ago. She looked at me, not with pity, but with Euro strength. Sometimes, she said, forgiveness isn't about them. It's about giving yourself peace. Her words echoed in my head for days. Was peace even possible after something like this? But a strange thing started happening. I reached out to my brother. We hadn't spoken much since college, but I needed to hear a familiar voice, someone not tangled up in all this drama. He surprised me, no judgment, just listen and crack dumb jokes to make me laugh. And it actually did. Talking to him, it felt like a tiny corner of my life wasn't infected by this whole mess. Something inside me was starting to shift. Not a sudden change, but a slow unclenching. Like, maybe there was a way to carry this pain without letting it control me. Maybe I needed to find my own version of peace, even if it took forever. Talking to my brother led to something unexpected, a conversation with my parents. It had been years since I'd really opened up to them. They were traditional, not the openly emotional type. But sitting down with them, this vulnerability hanging between us, changed things. I hesitantly mentioned my mom's situation, then haltingly brought up my own past. The words hung in the air, cheating, betrayal, all the things we never really talked about. To my surprise, they didn't shy away. My dad admitted their marriage hadn't always been perfect. There were rough patches, mistakes on both sides. Mom talked with a quiet strength I'd never heard before. Sometimes love isn't enough. Sometimes you have to choose to build something, even when it's hard. Their words didn't make my problems disappear. But it felt like a weight lifted, knowing I wasn't the only one with a messy, imperfect relationship. Time moved in a weird way, weeks blending together, then punctuated by sudden bursts of decision. One day, it just felt right. I texted him, asked him to meet me at a place neutral of any baggage. The conversation wasn't a fairy tale. No tears, no sweeping declarations. I laid out my doubts, my fears. Asked him, bluntly, why should I even trust him after everything? His answer surprised me. It wasn't excuses anymore, it was a raw honesty. I don't know, he admitted. I messed up, badly, but I love you, and I'm not asking you to just forget. I'm asking for a chance to earn it back, every single day. It wasn't the answer I hoped for, but it felt real. A stark reminder that there was no fix to this, only a slow climb back to something resembling trust. Weeks later, I found myself back by that river. The place where it all began to crumble. I sat where he'd been that night. Rain wasn't falling, just a quiet gloom. It didn't feel agonizing anymore. Not peaceful, but bearable. A memory, not an open wound. Then came the wedding day. Beautiful setup, sunshine, everyone smiling. But inside, I was a tangled knot. Could I walk down that aisle,